I'll be speaking with Jess Sundin from the Rasmea Defense Committee. She's currently in Minneapolis, and we have some breaking news about the case of Palestinian-American Rasmea Odeh. Good morning.
Good morning, Sammy. How are you?
So what has happened? What is the news?
Well, we had been eagerly awaiting a decision from Judge Drain in Detroit on the effort to get Rasmea a new trial where her expert witness regarding her testimony and her experience of torture and the consequential post-traumatic stress disorder be allowed to be presented to a new jury. And just yesterday, we finally had a decision from Judge Drain on this very matter. Rasmea will be having a new trial and will finally have a chance to present her defense in open court.
So it's a whole new trial on the facts.
That's right. In the first trial, the judge had initially planned to allow Dr. Mary Fabry, who is a world-renowned expert clinical psychologist in torture and the treatment of torture survivors. He had initially said he would allow her testimony, but a last-minute maneuver by the prosecution managed to have it just days before the trial have the testimony excluded, and that really left us in a very difficult position of not being able to present a full and complete defense.
Mm-hmm. Let's go back to the start of the case. When was she arrested and why was she arrested?
So Rasmea was arrested in October of 2013 in Chicago. She was arrested on charges of fraudulently applying for her citizenship status in the United States. And specifically, the government's allegation was that she had made misstatements or false statements in her application and interview. And, you know, I think what really goes to the point of this, we've always seen the case against her on immigration charges as a pretext. Rasmea has been in the United States for 20 years. She's been a citizen for 10 years. It's not a common practice for immigration to go back and check the application forms of people 10 and 20 years after they've been admitted to this country. We understand that Rasmea's case and immigration documents were under review because of her own work as a community leader in the Arab and Palestinian community in Chicago, her, tireless and consistent defense of the cause of Palestinian liberation, and her association with anti-war and international solidarity and Palestinian activists who were targeted as part of a broad, sweeping FBI investigation that didn't in itself result in any charges, or at least hasn't yet, but she was caught up as an associate of some of the people in that case. And we understand that's actually the origin of her prosecution, her association with targeted political activists and her own community and political work as well.
So what did they say she did falsely when she applied for citizenship?
There are, a lot of forms with a lot of pages. One section of the immigration application asks about applicants' criminal history. The section that asks those questions is immediately following another section that is entirely questions about your conduct in the United States. And Rasmea's interpretation of those questions was that it continued to be asking about her conduct in the United States. I don't think she even had parking tickets in the U.S. in those 20 years. She certainly has had no criminal record here. And combine that with the fact that Rasmea's history in Palestine is a matter of public record. Her release from an Israeli prison was part of an internationally negotiated prison.
All right, wait. Before we get into that, so I just want to get it clear. So in other words, she said she didn't have a criminal record,
That's
And
right.
and then now the government is saying, aha, what about Palestine? What happened in Israel? Israel, you were in
Yeah,
prison there. Okay, so
right.
what happened? Why was she put in prison in an Israeli prison? What is it, 30 years ago or whatever?
Yeah. So Rasmea was caught up in a time, there were some 500 people arrested in this sweep of Palestinian activists. She's one of the people who was picked up in this broad sweep, and she was tortured for several weeks at the hands of her Israeli captors. And based on that torture, was compelled to sign a confession to two bombings that happened, and one, I think both in Jerusalem. Um, it has been her, public. She's been on the record publicly ever since her release that, in fact, that confession was untrue. That what she signed was authored by her Israeli captors, and that it was only because of the physical and both the physical and emotional, sexual torture that she experienced, that is what compelled her to sign those confessions.
And if I could break in here, I read an article in The Nation about 2014 detailing some of the torture. I can't describe it. I don't want to say the words, but I will
Sure.
link to it. People should read it and see what was done to a human being
Yeah.
by these Israeli authorities. So, all right. So she says, yeah, I did confess to this stuff, and they put her in prison for how long?
10 years.
For 10 years, but she repudiates the confession and so on.
Hmm.
So, at any rate,
Yeah, and
go ahead. I'm sorry.
it just, and moreover, when she was released, it was, part of an internationally negotiated prisoner release. And the United States was, both involved in investigating events surrounding her original arrest, as well as a party to the, release of prisoners, including her. And so, her understanding was that the U.S. government had full knowledge of events that happened in Palestine and what happened to her imprisonment, and also she had testified at the United Nations about the unspeakable torture that she survived. And so when she was presented with these questions, on the heel of a bunch of other questions about the United States, it did not occur to her that the government was asking about events they already knew had happened before she came to the United States.
And then there's the question of the PTSD affecting her also in this answer.
So Dr. Fabry's testimony is very important because, the questions are written in a broad way, and certainly one could imagine that they include, the lifetime in your lifetime, but Rasmea didn't. Dr. Fabry is prepared to testify that the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder really impact a person's memory and their memory recall in a way that, protects you from being re-traumatized by kind of in unexpected moments, referring back and remembering traumatizing events. And so, according to Dr. Fabry and experts like her, it is a known phenomenon with PTSD that, that these memories, they're not forgotten, but that a person will automatically, without intention, kind of avoid recalling these difficult times that caused the original trauma.
So it looks like I'm sorry.
So it would be a natural thing to look at this form and not try to think of the worst thing that ever happened to you. That's an automatic function of the brain that is, a product of PTSD and aims to protect the person who has experienced these traumatizing events.
So this will be brought up at the new trial. Now, who will be the judge?
Yeah.
Will it be Drain again?
We will have Judge Gershwin Drain again in Detroit, Michigan. Yep.
And when might this trial be?
January 10th has been floated as a potential trial date, but the latest ruling doesn't set a specific start date. So we are geared up for a trial in January and possibly even, the first half of January. But we're awaiting an actual scheduling by his clerk before we know.
How much is this all costing the state of Chicago to go after this woman? I mean, any estimate of the money being spent for this?
I mean, it's very. I don't have an estimate. It certainly has to be in the millions. We have, first of all, there's a huge team of attorneys working for the prosecution. When we were in the courtroom, they had 2 or 3 attorneys at the prosecution table at all times. There are FBI agents who are, going through old records. These events in Palestine happened in 1969. So we're having FBI agents and State Department officers going through these old records, trying to translate them into English and have those presented to the court. And of course, Rasmea was also incarcerated after the first trial for about a month. And that is an expense as well. And moreover, the government has had an expert, their own forensic psychologist, examine Rasmea in Chicago earlier this fall.
So this is all costing tons of money.
Tremendous investment.
And in your press release, your committee is calling for the dropping of the whole charges. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Every day that the government pursues this case against a person who has no criminal history in this country and has done nothing but contribute to her community here, every day is, a waste of your resources and mine, our taxpayer money. And the hope is that the pressure from the community, from folks across the country, can have some impact. So we are asking folks to call U.S. Attorney Barbara McQuaid in Detroit. People have been calling her all day already to urge her to drop the charges.
Now I have the phone number. I have the phone number in front of me. Do you have it, or do you want me to read it?
I do.
Why don't you read it off?
It's 313-226-9100.
And I did make that call. It's really easy. You get a secretary or a clerk, and they give you her voicemail, and then you say whatever you want to say. So it's really no sweat for those who are a little nervous about those things.
It is no sweat.
Yeah.
But I think, also the significance of it can't be understated. The fact is, Rasmea is a victim, a survivor of unspeakable torture at the hands of a government that the United States has spent billions propping up and against the cause of Palestinian liberation. And so when we have this government bringing her again to trial here, it is like affirming the crimes that were committed against her by Israel rather than allowing her to build a new life in a safe place, re-targeting, re-victimizing someone who survived, something so terrible. And so, we really hope that people will make these calls today. It's absolutely at the discretion of the U.S. Attorney's Office. They could drop this case, and that's exactly what they should do.
Okay, and once again, we're going to link to that Nation article about this on YouTube and on our website, thestruggle.org. And my final question is the Defense Committee website. What is that?
Yeah, you can get updates about the case and also resources for organizing efforts in your community at www.justicefor.Rasmea.org. And Rasmea is spelled Rasmea. So it's justiceforrasmea.org.
Well, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. And I appreciate you making that call.
And this is Stanley Heller for The Struggle.